Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Product Marketing Perspective. We are here to talk to some of the most influential marketing leaders in India about all things product marketing. I'm your host, Kushal Khandelwal, a fellow product marketer, and I'm super thrilled to bring you this brand new podcast with the Product Marketing Alliance. Today, we have Madhurima Gupta, Director and Head of Product Marketing at Hiver. She's previously worked in some cool PMM roles at Haptic and High Radius. Madhurima, thanks a lot for joining us from Hyderabad. I'm super excited to have you here. I remember in the last conversation, we spoke a little bit about how you started your career in sales and then gradually transitioned into product marketing 8 or 10 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about your journey in product marketing, who you are, what you do for our audience?
Sure, happy to do that, Kushal. Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening in. I'm very excited about doing this podcast. Like you rightly said, I started my career in pre-sales and sales, Kushal, and eventually moved on to marketing. Pre-sales is more on the bridge of being between marketing and sales.
Right,
And that was the first time I sort of worked in product marketing, so to say, at that point in time, because that was sales enablement, right?
right.
And around that time, when I was trying to enable the sales team, I would often hear that people always felt in sales that they did not get everything that they needed. They always needed more than what we could deliver, right? So I was like, okay, let me experience sales, see what's it all about, how and when do people struggle with it. So I thought if I know how you sell, you'll be able to do better at work. So I took up a sales job in Airtel when I was basically selling postpaid plans. And believe me, it was one of the most difficult things to sell,
I'm
right?
sure.
And that's exactly when the reality stuck, you know. I mean, it stuck with me that getting the support that you need from marketing is not always easy. You end up doing a lot of things yourself, and even then, you're always struggling to get the right thing out, right? So that's when that happened. And during these first couple of years of my career, I sort of juggled between these responsibilities, wherein I
Mhm.
realized that at the end of the day, it's about understanding what your customers really need, right? That's the
Right,
ultimate thing.
perfect.
And once you've identified what that is, being able to communicate it effectively is challenging, and it actually enticed me. Around this time, I joined a startup as the first marketing hire and also the fifth employee of the company, and saw the journey of the company go from almost zero to about a couple of million in revenue.
Hmm.
That job was definitely one of the most fulfilling roles that I've ever had, because it helped me learn the ropes across all the functions, and something that a marketer in later stages of their career would really benefit from.
Right.
Post that job, I worked with some hypergrowth startups, like you also called out, GeoHaptic, High Radius, and currently I'm with Hiver. Effectively, been in the PMM space since 2016.
Well, that's very similar to actually how I got into PMM myself, like from a sales background, right? From sales to, like you said, a full stack marketer to now more focused on just product marketing. So, and I think that's a really good space to come in from. Like, it really gives you like sort of an edge in terms of understanding different aspects of the overall go-to market, and then being able to enable, let's say, sales and product and all the other teams. So, that's really like that's a good way to get an edge. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% agreed.
And that brings me to my first question for the day. A lot of product marketers, they say product marketing is very misunderstood. It has a lot of different meaning in every company. There's also a famous book, on it. Wanted to know, like, what is your take on that? How do you define product marketing for yourself, for your teams?
Absolutely. I think product marketing probably is the most gray of all kind of marketings one can do. And that starts right from its definition, right? And at the end of the day, what it boils down is to being the ultimate support function for a variety of other departments in a company, right? Whether it is sales, product management, account management, internal growth.
Hmm.
When I say internal growth, I mean internal growth teams, content marketing teams, and the structure or the hierarchy for PMMs vary from company to company. For instance, in some companies, it could be into product management heads. In some
Hmm.
companies, it could be under sales teams, it could be under CMOs as well. So that practically depends on how the company really functions. For example, if you are reporting into, let's say, PM head, it means that you'll be responsible for being the customer and sales team's voice in the PM team.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's like one of the best roles that you can play.
Yep.
And then apart from that, if let's say you're reporting into sales, that means your role will be more sales support first, right? Sales enablement, training, heavy, and you'll probably spend a major part of your time identifying the total addressable market, contact base to go after, creating the right kind of cohorts, messaging for it, developing competitor intelligence, industry playbooks. Again, a pretty enticing place to be. However, if you do get a chance to be in a company where marketing actually reports into CMOs,
Hmm.
or whoever is the CMO, whatever designation they may hold, it's like all of what we just talked about, and in addition to that, website, the core messaging across all assets, etc., would also roll into you as a product marketer. So I think that's how I see it in terms of being defined in different companies, and how and why it is actually great. Because in some companies you'll do some parts of it, in some companies you do the other ones. So I think as and when you grow from one role to another, there's always a lot to learn.
Yep. Yep. That's actually a very interesting take. You described product marketing as the ultimate support function, and I completely resonate with that. Like even in my experience, PMM has usually always been like an enabler of all the different GTM functions that ultimately drive like the product's growth overall, right? But I'm also curious, like in what aspects do you think can product marketing drive growth directly for a company or a product?
Sure. Let me explain it with an example. So, for instance, when we talk about growth, growth happens in different ways. It could
Hmm.
be net new revenue driving growth, it could be expansion driving growth. Growth could also be in terms of ensuring that if your company has a product X, and X can be used to ABC depth, right? Ensuring that all your ABC levels of usage are there. So that's also a sort of a growth. Then if let's say you have a product A and you can make people upsell to your customers for a product level B or product
Right.
C, all of these are growths that you can provide to a company as a product manager or a product marketer as well, right? So I think that is the right way to look at growth. For instance, let's say if we talk about free trial, right? Now,
Hmm.
free trial growth is responsible for managing the number of free trials you generate. So the moment your free trial sign up happens, growth is done. Now, from growth to let's say somebody who's managing post sale experience, that probably will roll into customer success or account management role, depending on different companies and how they operate. But the journey in between these two are generally one area that is not necessarily looked at by anybody, right? What is the adoption like during trial? How can you increase the
Right.
number of active days on a free trial, right? Or ensuring that there's some kind of gamification you might have done. All of that is not something that people generally end up focusing on either of the other functions. You're more focused on creating more features or new products if you're into product management. You're more focused on driving more signups if you're into growth. So I think this is a very good
Yep.
sweet spot for product marketers to come in and see what can they do better during free trial. So your sign up team got like 100 signups, let's say, right now you're
Hmm.
converting at, let's say, 50% of it or 30% of it, whatever that number might be. There's always potential for a product marketer to come in and create journeys within the trial that can help increase the number of paid signups that you're, for instance, at the end generating. So that is a KPI that PMM can own up, for instance.
Yeah, that's interesting too. I think so. You're saying it's more like taking them closer to the aha moment in your product.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Also, I mean, with such like a broad scope overall, like given everything that you just described, like how do you define what your PMM charter looks like in terms of what are the objectives and goals? What are the scope of work for product marketing as a function overall?
Sure. So The scope of work is generally divided into a couple of segments, broad segments, so to say. So you can say the first segment to be support and customer success team, right?
Right.
Or support and account management team, whatever it is called in your respective organizations, specifically
Mhm.
for listeners, right? So generally, this team, if you're working with this team, you'll be working on understanding customer feedback, so that you can help the product team eventually build better features, ensure that they are following the voice of customers, right? Then, in addition to that, you'll also end up creating case studies, management of customer advocacy. All of that will come in here.
Right.
Then there'll also be beta testing programs at all different points in time.
Hmm.
So, being a part of those beta programs, that is inevitable. That's something that's going to be on your charter always. Now, if you work very closely with the
Right.
customer success on it, you can actually be a part of seeing how people are perceiving the new beta features that you are working on. If the messaging and positioning for that is enticing enough, right? So I think listening to how your customers respond to what you think should work as messaging is one great exercise, and that is something which you can execute only if you work really closely with the customer support, customer
Correct.
success, or account management team. So I think that is the first area. The second
Hmm.
area would be working with the demand generation, social, and growth teams. So, you've put together a messaging and positioning for different, usage in terms of assets, marketing channels, right? Now, making sure that it gets disseminated, because distribution of all of that information is equally important, if not more,
Yep.
right? So I think for that, you'll also have to work with demand generation, creation of content, aligning it with all different channels that are there, ensuring that they're promoted enough. And, then you also hear back from these teams to figure out whatever you have planned, if it worked or not. Did it hit the numbers that you were planning? For instance, let's say if you're driving a webinar, right? You thought of a certain topic. Did it perform as well as the rest of the webinars that you've done in the past or not, right? So
Mhm.
that's where working with the demand generation or the growth team comes into picture. Then the
Mhm.
next segment would be sales team, right? So working with them to find out what prospects are saying, hearing the voice of the user, the prospect who's actually going to buy, into your
Yep.
product eventually. So terminology is being used, messages that can be derived from what these prospects are actually looking for, right? Listening to their challenges, requirement areas of education in terms of whether they understand the challenge that they are facing. Are they able to put it into words or not, right? Because a lot of times you know that there's a problem, but you don't really pin it down to, okay, this is the exact area that needs to be fixed, right? So
Right.
figuring it out, creating thought leadership, motions around it is something that sort of comes in here if you work very closely, on the sales side. Yeah, so that's one thing. Then the last, but definitely not the least, would be the product team, right?
Awesome.
So contributing to development of the product roadmap, identifying the key pain points, gaps that are there in the current product that you're hearing from prospects or from customers, and ensuring that you're able to contribute to new feature development. I think that's one of the best things that a product marketer can do. I think those would be the areas that a product marketer or a product marketing team will end up catering to. Now, depending on these areas, your KPIs can vary from company to company. It could be how many
Right.
goals have you been able to meet, like number of leads generated, MQLs, opportunities created, or it could be on-time product releases, adoption metrics like active users, account health scores, number of happy users, happy accounts, all of that could come into picture.
Right.
Effectiveness of sales collateral, it could be stakeholder satisfaction, co-ownership of outbound or inbound channels. So, maybe you are handling it with the outbound or inbound leader, and you jointly own certain metrics for them. So, yeah, I think those would be the key KPIs.
Awesome. I think that's a really like wide and comprehensive scope overall, and I think that really very nicely defines overall what product marketing should be doing in a lot of companies, right? And especially like those quick wins, they're so important and so easy to do. But for example, the onboarding checklist that you spoke about, right? It's surprising that not a lot of products actually have something like that, and it's really like a quick and easy thing to build, and it does wonders for your product adoption, right? Especially for people in the free trial space. So it's great that you got that
Absolutely.
spot on. Yeah. And given that product marketing sort of is relative to at least product, and traditional marketing is a new function, like how do you focus? How do you like change your focus or be more strategic in terms of working with all of these teams that you spoke about? Because I've usually faced like a lot of resistance entering into the territory of other teams. So like how do you
Sure.
make sure you're sort of a strategic partner and you have that buy-in with the rest of the teams?
I think it really depends on how well you're able to collaborate, right? Being a collaborative team is
Hmm.
the most important criteria for a product marketing team to function effectively.
Yep.
Yes, there will be a lot of cross wires with your partner teams that you'll work day in and day out with. There will be times that you'll face resistance to enter territories because, in some companies that just inevitably happens.
Yeah.
So I think the way I look at it, or I try to find opportunities, is to simply figure out what's not happening, right? The free trial example that I gave you some time ago, where I said, hey, there is a possibility that growth team is driving until sign up, and the product management team is driving adoption once somebody subscribes, right? But the middle
Mhm.
area is one area that, let's say, nobody has picked up so far because that's nobody's responsibilities. You need to find such sweet spots for yourself, because in every company, believe me, there will be such sweet spots. It's just that
Yeah.
you have to be attentive to it, right? You have to figure out, hey, this is an area that requires work, but nobody is owning it up. So let me do it.
Mhm.
And nobody will say no to you at that point in time. But if you are, picking up certain projects that are already being done, I think then it's a better idea to become a support function there, right? Wherein
Mhm.
there will always be insights and inputs that you as a product marketer can add to this other function that you're working with. I think at that point in time, the metrics like stakeholder satisfaction can be used, right? Because at the end of the day, you need more people to be satisfied of what you're doing in the organization. So use it from that standpoint instead of, having an area of resistance. Just say that, hey, I'm going to be one of the stakeholders for you to help you do your job better. And in turn of that, you get a better satisfaction rating for yourself. And I think it's a great, I don't know if a lot of product marketers do it or not, but it's a great idea to do this quarterly surveys with your partner teams to figure out how well are you or your team is doing,
Mm.
because that really tells you
Right.
what these teams can benefit from. A lot of good ideas come in. So you should definitely give that a shot.
Yeah, I think I've experienced good success with that, especially like we usually have a quarterly feedback
Yeah,
meeting with all the cross-functional department that the product marketing works with, and the inputs you get in those sort of lay the foundation for the whole the next quarter afterwards. So
absolutely.
that's really good input from there. Awesome. So, Madhurima, with so much diversity, variations overall in what product marketing does, who it reports to, how do you decide what your product marketing team sort of looks like, what the structure is, who to hire, and all of that?
Sure. So, see, a product marketing team can be as big or as lean as required. It depends on what the expectations are. In some companies, the expectations from PMM could also be to write content, run campaigns as marketers, and in others, it might be, to stay attached with just a product line and strategize things for its launch, expansion, adoption, retention, maintenance of
Right.
help center, all of these, right? So depending on what kind of, support is available in an organization already, the size and required skill sets of the team will be varying always, right? So again, a very gray area. It's very difficult to sort of say, hey, this is how it'll work. And at the end of the day, it's going to depend on what your immediate goals and focus areas are. When you're interviewing for a role, understand what these goals, what these focus areas are, because that's how you will be able to figure out whether, if you've been given a team which is only, let's say, three people, will that be enough or not, right? So will it become challenging for you
Right.
later or not? I think that kind of clarity is required. And it's sort of difficult to put it in, saying that, hey, this is what works or this doesn't work.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, and I don't know if you've sort of experienced this as well, but a lot of founders and CXOs sort of see PMM purely as just a marketing function, right? And they sort of measure its success purely through SQLs and MQLs and opportunities and the like, metrics of the funnel, basically, right? So, like as a PMM leader, have you in your career experienced a situation like that where you've sort of been questioned about the value that product marketing brings? Because MQLs and SQLs are not something most product marketing teams affect directly, correct?
So honestly, I haven't really, never directly did this happen with me. The quantum of work has always been such that there has not been any concern. I think the concern is more about whether you're running the projects in a playbook fashion and if the team is
Yeah,
lean. So you basically need to validate each and every headcount that you have and if everybody is efficiently working. As long as that happens, I don't
fair
think
enough.
it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's pretty fair too. Yeah. And so, can you tell the audience a little bit about a time in your journey when a particular function or a product marketing team that you were a part of or you were leading perhaps that maybe didn't work or it didn't achieve the goals you wanted to, and sort of why that happened and like why it didn't work and something like that. Yeah.
Sure. So, Kushal, as humble as I possibly can be, right? I don't think a PMM function generally fails, right? As long as
Interesting.
PMM team is able to reiterate very quickly. For example, you came up with, let's say, a collateral, right? You identified that there are some flaws to it. There will always be, you might have missed one update that makes a
Mm,
lot of difference. There's a
right.
news article that you forget, you just, missed finding. So, yeah, you'll miss things, but they aren't failures. What it really needs is for you to quickly reiterate, fix things, right? So, it's always the speed of execution, embracing mistakes, openness to feedback, and fixing them on the go. I think that if you have that mix, any PMM team is going to thrive.
Yeah, I think I love that because like iteration is so important, and especially like as a product marketer, it's got to be the foundation of how we drive most of what we do at high level, especially, right? Like for example, like most great product market fit stories are purely about how you collect feedback and you sort of implement that and improve your product. It's all about iteration, especially as a product marketer.
Totally,
So,
100%.
yeah, awesome, great. So, Madhurima, do you have some advice for the young PMM leaders looking to build a new team or a function? What do you think they should do to get started? Like find the best role for themselves and then build the function that they want to
All right. So that's an interesting question. And my answer is going to sound controversial. Okay.
build.
But, I wouldn't suggest, I would suggest not taking the PM role only or at
Really?
all, right? And see, the idea is ideally you should have at least one additional thing on your plate that you need to be responsible for. Now, some part of that could be
Mhm.
some part of product management or it could be some part of digital marketing. So,
Yeah.
what I would recommend people who want to build a career in product marketing is that when you are interviewing, observe and ask thorough questions, right? Try to analyze if it will just be a support function, right? I think that's a red flag to some extent because you'll just end up, getting dragged from one area to the other depending on what the larger team really needs. Try to
Mhm.
analyze, whether it's going to have a strategic side to it or not, right? Would you be bogged down by, just ad hoc requests, or is this role, going to help you lift, let's say, the product up, or will it help you also work on adoption metrics, or contribute to expanding the current customer base?
Yeah.
I think if you sense that it's going to be only a support function, believe me, you should run in the opposite direction, no matter how desperate you are to get that job. Pick the job
Yep.
where the expectation is for you to be the voice of customer.
Yeah.
For developing new products, new features, defining the actual core messaging. Previous experiences in CSM, product management, and even sales would be really good to have.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I totally second that. I think it's really important to understand what you're getting into, especially like as any sort of a leader, like not just product marketing, any sort of a functional leader. It's important to get know what you're getting into because they can be, especially like even especially in product marketing, because there can be huge gaps in what product marketing actually is, what your particular skill sets and your experience is, and what people or leaders that are non that think what PMMs actually do. There is that huge gap between what PMM is and what people think PMM is. So it's really important to understand what you're getting into.
Absolutely, Kushal. I can't agree more. I think I've often seen, and I've done this mistake myself, that when I'm interviewing for a new job, I get like too busy in answering questions that I forget to ask.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's
I think
very
we're all guilty
important.
of that at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Ask the right questions from your hiring manager. Figure out what you'll end up doing, what your KPIs are, if there is clarity in that or not, because that'll make or break things for you later.
Yeah, that's completely agree with that. No doubt. Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot, Madhurima. I've loved this conversation. It's been great. Thank you so much for your time and candidly sharing your personal professional experience with our audience. I know I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure the audience will enjoy this episode as well.
It's
And
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
awesome. So, Madhurima, if anyone of our listeners wants to connect with you, get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me by Madhurima Gupta alias. Look for my previous experiences in high radius Hiver. I'm sure my profile will pop up.
Yep.
And in addition to that, I think I'm also available on other means of social media. Again, the same dimensions will work.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think she's pretty responsive too. So feel free to reach out anytime. Well,
Absolutely.
thanks again. It's been lovely having you on this episode of Product Marketing Perspective. And I hope to have you here again sometime soon. And for our listeners, please drop in any questions, feedback in the comment section. We hope you've enjoyed this